Vasudev Kutumbakam has always been an important doctrine of Indian culture. We all belong to Mother Earth, and Mother Earth belongs to us all. No wonder the flagship program of the Honorable Minister Shri Thakurji is called Majhi Vasundhara, My World. A cleaner and greener world is a global aspiration. Many countries have taken significant strides to create policies and implement them towards this vision. Wouldn't it be wonderful to hear perspectives of each other, learn from each other, and where possible, forge partnerships with each other? To talk about international experiences and perspectives on new mobility, may I now invite on stage Ms. Manisha Mhaiskar, Principal Secretary, Environment and Protocol, Government of Maharashtra, His Excellency Alan Gemmell, British Deputy High Commissioner, United Kingdom, Mr. Eric Malberg, Consul, Sweden, Mr. Arne Jan Flolo, Consul-General, Norway, Mr. Kobbi Shoshani, Consul-General, Israel, Mr. Luiz Felipe Czarnobai, Deputy Consul-General, Brazil, Mr. Bart Jong, Consul-General, Netherlands, Mr. Alessandro Di Masi, Consul-General, Italy, Ms. Diedrah Kelly, Consul-General, Canada, and may I also request Mr. Prashant Girbane, Director General, MCCIA, to moderate this session.
Isn't this wonderful? As I was telling Mr. Poonawala, the same coincidence happened here. Very much in the same city, in the same hotel property, in the same hall, on this stage. I think I had a conversation with some of you just a month ago. Isn't it, Kobbi? We talked about international business. We talked about collaborations between Maharashtra, Pune, and your respective countries. This is great because when we are setting up the panel, usually we decided a classic format of 4+. We will have a representative from the government and a moderator. That's about 6. But given the interest of all of you in the audience, and fortunately, given also the interest of the Consul Generals, it's wonderful to be able to see all the Consul Generals here today. This reminds me of my first job. That was in United Nations. And it makes me feel almost like I'm back to the first job, but that's wonderful. So here is what we're going to do. We have about 45 minutes, and we'll keep to the time. My colleagues have already started the clock there. Given the number of us that we have, we could do the arithmetic and we would know possibly the time that we have. But given the excellence of communicating a lot of insights in fewer minutes, I'm sure that we're going to have a wonderful session. To begin with, I'm going to request the Principal Secretary of Government of Maharashtra, who is responsible not just for the environment, but also is the Chief Protocol Officer of Maharashtra State. So may I request Ms. Manisha Mhaiskar ji to give her opening remarks from where she is, then I'll go to each one of you.
So thank you so much and good evening. Today I am wearing my main hat, my hat of environment. The hat I normally wear when I interact with all of you is that of protocol. And I always like to thank my minister that environment and protocol together is such a good combination to go. So yes, it indeed seems like this is a dais of a mini United Nations. And thank you all for attending. As all of you know, Maharashtra has the most ambitious of EV policies. So it is good to, we would really like to hear from all of you about your own EV experiences. But I'll just share a very small incident which happened with me. I came from Mumbai to Pune driving the EV. I mean, I asked my driver to drive a EV. And it took me about 10 minutes of time to convince him that EVs are also good for intercity driving. You know, this whole range anxiety and all of that. But once I was able to convince him and once he actually drove the EV, he realized that it is any day a better drive than a traditional ICE. So as you speak about the EV presentation, we would also like to hear as to how you have been managing change. Because what we realize is the entire talk about the climate change has to be also about communication Our Minister Sir has just joined all of you, so I would take this opportunity also to welcome our Minister Sir. This conference has essentially been his brainchild. Thank you so much.
Many, many thanks for those opening remarks. So here is what we're going to do. We would start from the lady. We'll start from the Consulate-General of Canada. And we would move on in the clockwise direction. I hope I got that right. And what's going to happen is there is going to be 2 minutes each one of that you could take each one of you and talk about what's happening in your country about the alternate fuels and what's the potential of collaboration with India. So that's the broader question. If I could request your colleague to hand over the mic to you on your left. That's one shared as well, yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. My name is Diedrah Kelly, and I am the Consul-General of Canada to West India. And this session couldn't be more timely for a number of reasons. First of all, only a couple of weeks ago, Canada announced its plan for 2030 emissions reduction, which seeks to have 40 to 45% reductions below our 2005 levels before 2030. So that's an ambitious target. The other reason is that there have been a number of developments in the EV sector, both in terms of in Canada, but also in terms of announcements related to India-Canada cooperation. Perhaps a couple of notes on similarities between our two industries. So like India, the automotive industry is a critical component of Canada's economy, and it contributes 16 billion to GDP and employs over 130,000 people. It includes a network of suppliers and Canadian companies that operate not only in Canada but around the globe. And in fact, in terms of automotive components, there are two major Canadian companies that are manufacturing in Pune. Those are Linamar and Magna. And both of those are in the powertrain supply. And we recognize that moving forward and in this transition to EV, that there's going to be a little bit of love and care that's needed for those particular sectors. Now, beyond manufacturing, Canada is also very active in R&D, and there are a number of R&D partnerships between Canadian and Indian entities. So if I look at Tata Trust, they're collaborating with the University of Toronto, for example. But we've also had some more significant announcements recently. You may have seen that India's Adani Group signed an MOU with Ballard, a Canadian company, for the production of hydrogen fuel cell manufacturing in India. So that was a big announcement that came out within the last 2 weeks. Another is Canadian company Blue Wave AI, which signed a 3-year commercial agreement with Tata Power for energy optimization. And I should note, in terms of forward-looking cooperation and areas where we could further expand beyond manufacturing, R&D, is in the supply chain of precious minerals. So Canada does have a supply of nickel, lithium, graphite, and cobalt. These are critical for battery production. And investing in mining operations could help secure India's supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What I'm going to request also, yes, please, once again, no penalty for clapping. It doesn't harm. Thank you. I'm also going to request each one of you to please introduce yourself and the country so that they would hear more from you than me.
Okay, my name is Bart de Jong. I'm Consul-General of the Netherlands in Mumbai. And let me start by applauding the Maharashtra government for its leadership in climate policy, also the very ambitious plans that they have. We in the Netherlands also have ambitious plans. That's basically because climate change is endangering our country, our economy. 1/3 of our country is below sea level, another third is just above that. So when sea level rise occurs, half of the country, 2/3 of the country will be underwater. So that's why we engaged very early in active climate policy. We're working on our energy mix, of course. We're going to renewables, those kinds of things. But I'd like to focus a bit on what we're doing in electric transportation. We have already one of the highest, if not the highest, EV uptake in the world per thousand vehicles. and also very high charging infrastructure. Now, that doesn't it doesn't grow by itself. That is all the result of a very deliberate stimulating policy. We started with financing schemes for vehicles, tax incentives, also in the beginning even subsidies. They're no longer there because EVs became so popular that the subsidy scheme was unaffordable. So we don't have any subsidies anymore, but we do have tax incentives. And as was pointed out by Minister Desai this morning, there is no uptake in EVs if you don't have a proper charging infrastructure. It has been mentioned by a number of people already. What we do have is a national agenda for charging infrastructure, which puts responsibilities on all levels of governments, provincial governments, municipalities, regional corporations, and also actually on the private sector. They should hammer out a deliberate policy on how to get enough chargers on the street. The result is that at the moment we have 80,000 chargers, most of them actually being on public roads, so not in offices or factories or whatever, 80,000 chargers in a country with a population of 17 million. What also was pointed out, and I heard Manisha Mhaiskar just say that there is still a range anxiety. Yes, there is, if you don't have the proper charging infrastructure. So in our country at the moment we have 600 fast chargers along the highways. So it's in 20 minutes and your battery is fully loaded again. So one of the critical factors I would say for success in the Netherlands is that we go for international cooperation between companies, but also between governments. We're a very strong advocate of open standards. Open standards will provide for interoperability of vehicles, of charging infrastructure also, and that of course is very important for import and export. And what we heard this morning also is that India is actually looking for exports. So open standards, that's one of the first things you would need there. And we're also actually experimenting, or there are some pilots already, with bidirectional charging. Normally a vehicle is charged from the grid, but bidirectional is that it also can go the other way. A vehicle can charge the grid or charge a household. And that of course, if you have that in order, that would mean that private households get an extra impetus to convert or to change to electric vehicles. Having said all that, we do have some experience, mainly in the charging infrastructure. We're willing to share that with Indian partners. We already have a number of companies active over here, and we're looking forward to extend it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Kobbi Shoshani. I'm the Consul-General of Israel. I'm coming from a very small country, startup nation we call it, and the idea of cooperation between India and Israel is, for me, the sky is the limit. I will start with one of our biggest failure in the recent years in the EV field. It's a company that actually tried to change completely the whole system. Instead of charging the battery, change completely to swap the batteries in a petrol station, but it didn't succeed. But as everybody says, what doesn't kill you makes you more stronger. We have to find out a solution, and we will try, and we are trying to find out other solutions. I've heard the opening session in the morning, and I've heard Sudhir Mehta talking about buses, and it was quite discussion about if it's needed, yes or not. And I tell you frankly, without electric buses, it won't be the same thing. You have to invest in electric buses. Now, concerning the charging of the batteries, it's one of the biggest challenges, I assume, in the EV factory. We are trying to do like a test in Israel right now with a wireless charging under the roads, and the bus throughout driving, when are queuing and when are standing, they are charged, and it's heavily used. And I think the investment in buses, especially in buses, is extremely important. Concerning cooperation, we are we have a very good cooperation with Sona System Company. That's the name, Indian company with the Israeli company called IRP. We are making the coordination between the engine and the battery. It's called driver or other name which I'm not familiar. We call it driver, and we sign a strategic agreement. Last but not least, I would like to talk about something which is a little bit sensitive. It's about the magnet. I don't know if you know, I think that in the next years, the prices of magnet, which made all this engine made by magnets, going to be jump up. And I think we have to find out also solution for that, and we are on the way to that. Also with the Israeli and Indian company to find out combination of semi-magnet engine, because the price is going to be extremely high, and it's coming from one country which has the control. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobbi. Please, I'm going to save time so that you all have more time to speak, so please, one after the other.
Thank you very much. My name is Arne Flolo. I'm the Consul-General of Norway to Mumbai, covering Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Goa. Thank you so much for inviting me yet again to Pune to take part in also yet again a very interesting conference. And I would like to thank the government of Maharashtra, represented by the Honorable Minister Aditya Thackeray, and for taking the initiative to this conference. It is very, very timely, and it is really a good point in time also for Maharashtra to take the lead and in sort of this transition that we are all talking about. The question is relating to electric vehicles, EV policies and so on. We have been talking about mobility also relating to other means of other propulsion means. So I'd be happy to say a little bit about hydrogen economy and ammonia and so on afterwards. But I will start with electric vehicles. Norway is by far the world leading when it comes to introducing electric vehicles and incentivizing electric vehicles. Sort of last month, 86.1% of all new cars sold, passenger cars sold in Norway were electric. We have already, and it's quite staggering actually that out of the 20 top cars on the list, you would find only one fossil car. The other 19 are electric. And of course, from month to month, it could vary which car would be on top and so on. So you would have Audi one month, it could be Tesla the other months, it would be... Actually, Porsche Taycan was January's number one choice. But anyhow, this is staggering. And already now, in December, we passed 50% of all passenger cars rolling on Norwegian roads are electric.
Wow.
So not only are we selling sort of a lot of new vehicles, we have already made that crossed that mark of more than half being electric. So, and also as my Dutch colleague said, this hasn't just happened by itself. And you could actually anticipate that a country like Norway, who's producing so much oil and gas, would be very happy to continue to drive around with fossils for quite some time. And I also be happy to note that sort of when we come to hydrogen and so on. But we haven't. We have been trying to take the front seat. And it's a whole value chain. We have been talking about this. It's an ecosystem, it's a value chain where sort of all the different components have to be working together. So incentives from the government side and policies are crucial. And in Norway, we have incentivized, for instance, by cutting the VAT. We are cutting import tax or purchase tax. There are no toll road fees, no ferry fees. We have, well, there are, but we have waived them for, you cannot put more than 50% of the fees for EVs. There's a very low annual road tax. There's a 50% discount or 40% reduced company tax on it, and so on and so on. You can drive in the bus lanes, and so there's a huge incentive. So at the bottom of this long list, if you had an Volkswagen Golf and you had a Volkswagen e-Golf, the e-Golf would cost a couple of years ago 27,000 euros, while an ordinary Golf would cost 31,000 euros.
Oh,
so which one would you choose?
Yeah.
And we have also incentivized charging stations. We have sort of this word, sort of a distance anxiety, is actually a very common word in Norway. There are vast distances between cities in Norway. So we have incentivized the building of charging infrastructure so that people will actually buy a car because they know they will not be stuck in traffic or stuck at the top of a mountain. So that is also very important. There's an incentive scheme there. There is a compensation for all those petrol stations who want to build electric charging stations and so on. So we also have wireless charging for taxis so that they don't have to go out of line to charge and so on. So there's a whole host of incentives, and that is the reason why we are where we are today. So the goal is by 2025 there will be 100% EVs sold, and I think we will reach that target before 25.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll now request the Consul of Japan.
Hi, my name is Yasukata FUKAHORI. I'm a Consul-General of Japan in Mumbai. I'm just a diplomat, but I hold a PhD in the field of environmental economics. And my master's degree was in environmental science. So that this area is my personal interest, and I've been studying a lot in this area, so that I'm very happy to be here today. First, I'd like to talk about the importance of international cooperation. Ever since the problem of global warming is identified in the 1990s, international community has been working very hard. Particularly in Japan, we achieved the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. And then many OECD member countries, including Japan, signed up to the agreement, and then we have tried very hard to reduce the amount of CO2 emissions. Unfortunately, since the 1990s and until now, the amount of global emission of CO2 has been nearly doubled. But I would like to point out that those OECD member states, Europe and Japan and the USA including, that they haven't actually increased the amount of CO2 emissions. It hasn't increased, and then for the particularly last 10 years, we have been decreasing the amount of CO2 emissions. That's because we had a responsibility under this Kyoto Protocol and other international agreements. So that having the workable international agreement and international cooperation is very important. So that I appreciate that India has been working very closely together with us. And then Maharashtra government has been making a very, very good example to the international community that how local community can work together to reduce CO2 emissions. That's my point. Now that I have a question. In Japan, during the process of such effort, that one city has achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2. Do you know which city in Japan has achieved such a status? If you know the answer, please raise your hand.
There could be some prizes. Trust me.
Okay, so maybe you don't know the cities of Japan much, but then ask that question, same question for the USA. Which USA city has achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2 and the greenhouse gases? Do you know the answer? If you know. Yes, that is correct. New York is the answer. And same for Japan, that Tokyo has achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2 gases. Thank you very much. And then, reason why these major industrial cities have achieved the efficient the environmental system is the introduction of mass transportations. In Japan, like New York, we developed a wave of metro systems and train systems. And as you know, that metro cars and train cars, they are EVs. They move on electricity. So that those mass transportation systems, trains and metals, do not discharge any greenhouse gases, no CO2 emissions. Japan has been working together with India for the past many years to introduce metro systems and then brewery systems here in Mumbai and India. For example, we are constructing together with MMRDA the metro number 3 in Mumbai. And one metro car accommodates about 200, 300 passengers. And then they move in 7 to 8 cars, and then they move 10 times in hour for 20 hours, which means about 2 lakh passengers move in one metro line. So if metro line 3 is completed, 2 lakh passengers will move from cars to metro, which means probably we can reduce the number of cars by 1 lakh. 1 lakh cars will disappear if the metro 3 is completed. Likewise, we are constructing the bullet train system between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. At this moment, these 2 major cities are connected by roads, so that the trucks, buses, and cars are discharging CO2s every day. But if this bullet train system is completed, once again, probably 2-3 lakh passengers will change their means of transportation from cars to bullet train. They will connect the 2 cities in 2 hours. So they are not just business efficient, and then they can reduce poverty in the regions, but they can change the quality of air. They are very much environmental friendly. And based on that understanding, Japan has been working with India for many years. We are not just constructing Metro 3 and the bullet train system here in Mumbai, but we have been installing many metro systems in other cities in India, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Delhi, and Chennai. And then also we are constructing the freight system from New Delhi to Mumbai. If those systems are completed, we can reduce tons of greenhouse gases and CO2s. So I would like to point out that all those metro systems and train systems are EVs. By installing a mass transportation system, we can reduce a huge amount of CO2s. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Here is, apologies, here is what we're going to do. I'm just looking at the time as well. It's wonderful. We'll do one round. And if there is some time left, we'll be able to come back again, please.
Mera naam Alan hai, मैं British Deputy High Commissioner हूँ. हम साथ मिलकर कैसे क्लाइमेट चेंज से निपटने की दिशा में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभा सकता है. मेरा ख्याल है कि इस पॉलिसी में से महाराष्ट्र में नौकरियां बढ़ेंगी, पूरे समाज का विकास होगा. And that is equally important for my country too. This transition that we're looking at must not only develop our society, our livelihoods, our quality of life, but it must create jobs for people. And that's what we've heard from the Honourable Minister and the ambitious vision that he has set for Maharashtra. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson set out a 10-point plan to transform the UK economy and our society, and the environment for the transition to alternative fuels and green EV vehicles, with a focus on technology, supply chains, but also consumer confidence. That plan includes advancing offshore wind, delivering the growth of low-carbon hydrogen, delivering new and advanced nuclear power, accelerating the shift to green vehicles, but also jet zero, at green finance. And we heard the Minister this morning set out a similarly universal approach to this transformation and transition. And we're very much behind the vision that he has and the steps that the Maharashtra government is taking. Following Boris Johnson's 10-point plan, we set out a landmark net zero strategy with an aim to secure 440,000 well-paid jobs and unlock £90 billion of investment in this sector by 2030. The strategy is comprehensive, economy-wide. It's a plan for how British businesses and consumers will be supported in making this critically important transition to clean energy and green technology. And it's very clear at this very moment that many countries have to make significant changes in their energy mix to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels. And now more than ever, we must work urgently together to accelerate this shift to clean, green energy, which the UK and fellow panelists are offering to India and countries around the world. As part of our strategy, new investment includes £350 million to support the electrification of UK vehicles and their supply chains, and over £600 million for targeted electric vehicle grants and infrastructure. British Volt, a British EV battery manufacturer, has major plans. Their giga plant will deliver 300,000 EV battery packs a year and 3,000 high-value jobs in the northeast of the UK, and over 5,000 indirect jobs. The UK is setting a leading role on the climate story overall. We were delighted to host COP26 in Glasgow and very pleased that the Minister attended. We've hit every carbon budget to date, and our net zero strategy sets out clear policies and proposals for meeting our 4th and 5th carbon budgets and keeps us on track for our carbon budget 6, our ambitious NDCs, while setting out our vision for a decarbonised economy by 2050. It was inspiring to hear the Minister's ambitious vision at COP26 and the push that he is putting for a race to zero for cities across Maharashtra, way ahead of other targets that were set for India. In November 2020, British Prime Minister put the UK on course to be the fastest nation in the G7 to decarbonise road transport, announcing that sales of all new petrol and diesel cars and vans would end by 2030. Industry has comprehensively embraced this transition. By March 22, Mini, Vauxhall, Ford, Bentley, Rolls-Royce and others have committed to a zero-emission future from 2030, with more than £3 billion of investment flowing into that space. Tata, through their ownership of JLR, are also playing a leading role in that transition, with a commitment to make all Jaguar cars electric by 2025 and produce 6 fully electric Land Rovers by 2026. And we're also seeing significant investment from UK companies in this space in Maharashtra, and I'm delighted that Kossis are here, who've got a £300 million investment in Maharashtra, and with Ashok Leyland, contracts to deliver 900 EV buses in this state, transforming how people will get to and from work. So we're right at the centre, we think, of the EV green transition, not just in Britain and Europe, but around the world, and at the centre of the ambitious vision that the Minister has for a carbon-free economy here. मेरा ख्याल है Maharashtra में alternative fuels के लिए अभी है. And I might say one other thing, which is one of the panelists this morning said he wasn't that sure if he would go in an electric plane. I'm delighted that Rolls-Royce this year have broken 2 world records for all-electric flight. You can find out more about the Spirit of Aviation, I think the plane is called, which broke, the Spirit of Aviation hit an average of 559 kilometers over 3 kilometers earlier this year, a 400 kilowatt electric propulsion engine. Thank you very much.
Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Erik Malmberg. I am the Consul at the Swedish Consulate-General in Mumbai. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today. Thank you very much, the Maharashtra government, Minister Thackeray, for the initiative. It's highly, as everyone said, it's a highly important subject, and I think we are quite impressed also to see that the variety is still we went to the fair earlier today. I was at least impressed by the variety of initiatives there are. From Sweden's side, Sweden aims at being the first fossil-free welfare state. We have a goal in 2040, 100% of our electricity should be renewable. We should have a 50% more effective use of energy than in 2005. And in 2045, Sweden should, regarding greenhouse emission, be net zero. How is that possible? Because actually Sweden per capita is quite high in consumption. Among the highest basically in the world. Still, comparable with statistics from the World Bank, comparable an average American to American Swede, Swedes emit on 1/4 of the CO2 as the Americans do. One main reason to that is the amount of renewable energy. We have around, the bulk of the energy production that we have is still on hydropower mainly, nuclear power, but also a very steady increase of other renewable sources such as wind energy. Last year around 17%. There's a high focus in keeping renewable energy. To fulfill the goals of the fossil-free welfare state, one initiative from the Swedish government is what's called the Fossil-Free Sweden. It's a national initiative working towards to increase the pace of the climate transition by cooperating with industry. 22 different industries, such as, for example, transport, petrol production, steel production, have joined forces and identify opportunities that the climate transition can provide for these industries, and how it can be used also as a commercial advantage. And they aim to create their own visions, so 22 different visions, basically, and targets, and obstacles, and a proposal for solutions toward the journey to fulfill, basically, the target of net zero by 2045. And, of course, as aim goal also to build a strong industrial sector and create more jobs, export opportunities as well. If we look at the electrical side, of course, one main part of this is transport and how to use alternative fuels. We can start with electricity, since I think that's the most on-topic thing. A large part there is basically the public transport. Several Swedish cities right now are rolling out emission-free electric buses and using renewable electric power as well to power them. My own hometown, Norrtälje, was the first city in Sweden in 2018 to have a fully electrified fleet of the city buses. We also another initiative because the Swedish Transport Agency, as one of the climate goals, is to reduce emissions from domestic transport by at least 70% by 2030. As part of this, the Swedish Transport Administration has been commissioned to develop a plan for how 2,000 kilometers of the country's busiest road can be electrified by 2030. One experiment was made in 2020 when the first wireless charging electric road was constructed in the island of Gotland. I remember our Israeli colleague talked about this induction. I know that there is an Israeli component in that. So that's one example of international cooperation in this regard, basically. Basically, induction charging, like a toothbrush, electric toothbrush.
Thank you so much. Many thanks. Sorry, apologies, I interrupted you. Continue.
Yes. So all of the types of electric roads, but also if you look at the personal transport, personal cars, there is, of course, increase in this, around 20%, not, of course, on the level as Norwegians, but 20% last year was fully electric cars registered, of course, not counting hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles. The incentive from the government has been a bonus-malus system that increased a couple of years ago, where basically electric vehicles can get a bonus of up to around 6,000 euros and also tax exempted for a couple of years, while cars emitting above 95 grams of CO2 per kilometer get a punishment, so to say, a larger tax that increases for every gram of CO2 over that. Also, bonuses such as 50% incentives putting up charging infrastructure in houses to increase the charging infrastructure. Those are some of the alternatives, but also, since this is an alternative fuel, we also talk about other means that's been very important to increase emissions, which is, for example, biogas and bioethanol. Biogas produced by wet waste collected in Swedish households. Around 73% of the Swedish municipalities collect food waste and use it in bioplant to create biofertilizers and biogas. 3 kilograms of food waste can power a bus for around 1 kilometer.
Right.
And the same as bioethanol, where the first tests have been made in the late 80s and since early 2000s, there's ethanol basically fueling at every petrol station in the country. All of this actually led that in the 15 years that have the last 15 years, Swedish transport sector had decreased use of petrol and diesel by 75%. All in all, this shows that there is ideas, there are solutions. We also have a Swedish company working on the electrical flight and with planned commercial flights in 2026. We have a large cooperation platform with India in different regards. We have a memorandum of understanding on renewable energy and a joint innovation punch.
Yes.
And also we have the Swedish companies
sharing
the Swedish values, spreading the Swedish vision also, such as IKEA, for example, that as India is one of the focus countries, will throughout this whole supply chain try to implement 100% renewable energy. We are working tight with India, and as far as we see, there is no reason to not do any green transitions. We see all ideas, we have all ideas.
That's right.
This will work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Many, many thanks. I think thank you. I thought I couldn't hear it. So looking forward to hear the views from Brazil and Italy as well, and then we'll conclude. We have about 4 minutes, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much. My name is Luiz Felipe Czarnobai. I'm the Deputy CG for Brazil. So first of all, I'd like to thank the government of Maharashtra, especially Minister Aditi Takeri and Ms. Manisha Mhaiskar for the opportunity of being here today, and also the Maratha Chamber. Thank you so much. Well, Brazil is a world reference regarding alternate fuels. Around 50% of the total energy consumed in Brazil comes from renewable sources. The share in the energy matrix is led by sugarcane biomass, followed by hydraulic energy, firewood and charcoal, and other renewables, including wind and solar photovoltaic energy. It's worth noting that the participation of coal, a highly emitting source of global greenhouse gases in the Brazilian electricity matrix, is quite limited, only 2.7%, although globally it's still one of the predominant sources. Gas hull derived from sugarcane is the environmentally preferable technology developed and implemented in Brazil for fueling low-emission flex cars, which can run both on gasoline or ethanol interchangeably. In many countries, including India, it's mixed with gasoline to reduce emissions. Brazil has proudly been using ethanol as a vehicle's fuel since the 1970s. Ethanol, in addition to being widely distributed through the national network of gas stations, is also added to gasoline at a factor of 27%. In the case of heavy vehicles, the contribution of biofuels happens with the addition of biodiesel to diesel oil, a percentage that currently stands at 13%. This has effectively helped to control the pollution and improve the cities in Brazil with cleaner air. Over the past years, Brazil implemented several policies which allowed the country to become the world's second largest producer of ethanol and the world's largest exporter. Policies such as Pro-Alco in the 1970s and the National Program of Production and Use of Biodiesel in 2004. The use of those policies in the past led Brazil to recently come up with the National Biofuels Policy, which is called RenovaBio, which started to be implemented in 2019. This Brazilian policy recognizes the strategic role of all biofuels, ethanol, biodiesel, biomethamine, biokerosene, among others, in the Brazilian energy matrix with regard to its contribution to energy security, market predictability, and emissions mitigation. This program, RenovaBio, values the service of global greenhouse gases withdrawal from the atmosphere made by the biofuels. The program is expected to prevent the release of more than 600 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere over the next 10 years. The decarbonization credit is the main asset to promote greenhouse gas emissions reduction in the transport sector in Brazil. Each credit represents 1 ton of CO2 equivalent that was prevented from being emitted by fossil fuel. Being an exchange tradable security, the decarbonization credit will allow biofuel production in Brazil to be even more sustainable with investments in new technologies and efficiency. The credit can be used by anyone as a way of neutralizing their CO2 emissions. The production, sale, and use of biofuels in the country contribute to offering more sustainable, competitive, and safe energy, and to inducing gains in energy efficiency and emission reductions. By 2029, within the scope of that program I was talking about, Renewable Bio, global greenhouse gases emissions equivalent to the planting of 5 billion trees will have to be compensated. Moreover, according to the Brazilian Energy Plan 2050, Brazil's favorable territorial, environmental, and climatic conditions far exceed its energy demand for the next 3 decades at least. To sum up, Brazil has been working hard in the field of alternate fuels since the 70s, making the air and our environment in general in Brazil much cleaner. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Many thanks.
Good evening. You can't see it, but there is a watch here going backwards that states 1:42 minutes. So I promise I'll try to make it in that short period of time. So first of all, thank you so much. Thank you to the government of Maharashtra. Thank you, Honorable Minister Thakeray and my dear friend Manisha for hosting me today. I will try to be very brief in providing you with some very brief tips on three points. So one is the role of the Italian economy in Maharashtra, and more specifically in Pune, with a specific regard to electric mobility. Then I will be trying to present to you the priority that energy transition plays in our overall bilateral relations, and I will be concluding by providing you with some elements regarding some forthcoming projects we have in the pipeline. So as far as the Italian economy in Maharashtra and in Pune is concerned, just to let you know that in Pune itself we have 25 productive plants that generate €1 billion turnover per year and employs 15,000 workers, both white and blue collars. It's a growing presence. We are very proud of being here, and Pune represents, together with Maharashtra as a whole, one of our top commercial and investment priorities. As far as the e-mobility is concerned here in Pune, of course, many of you might know the national champion of Italy called Piaggio, which produces an iconic brand called Ape, which is the three-wheelers that has been paving the way to the mobility history of Italy, and I may say also India. And since 2019, Piaggio has started its production line of electric three-wheelers, and they produce around 15,000 units per year, and it's the only electrical vehicle which is made out of metallic body. So this is another very important aspect. I just would like to recall also that 40 women constitute one of the main important parts of the production line, and this is another very important topic for us, the gender balance also in the production line. So this is for us extremely important. Just to let you know that Piaggio is exporting, time is up is written there, I'm so sorry, just give me 2 more minutes and then it's finished. Piaggio is exporting to 40 countries from India, not to mention, of course, the Indian market, and generates a turnover of 360 million euros per year. Let's go to the second point, energy transition. Energy transition constitutes the first pillar of a plan of action that our 2 prime ministers have signed at the end of 2020, and green economy is this is the overall context in which this energy transition is inserted. So in this perspective, I just wanted to inform you that we are working on a very crucial event that will take place at the end of the year. It's a tech summit on energy transition at the highest political level, and that will include a session on future mobility, including biofuels, energy storage and battery recycling, sustainable electric hybrid mobility. As far as hydrogen is concerned, is another top priority sector for us. We have one of the most important companies called Snam, which is investing very, very importantly here in India. And this is another path that has been starting recently and of which we are very, very proud. I just wanted to recall one of the projects we have been discussing also with you, Honorable Minister, concerning the Mumbai-Milan partnership that we're trying to put in place as soon as possible. One of the top pillars of that partnership will be e-mobility in the terms of exchange of views, of information, and why not also of technology. So, time is up, is written there. I will stop here. Sorry if I took too much of your time, and thank you so much again for having me here today.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you so much. I think what we're going to do is, I know that there is so much to talk about, that so much we would want to listen because there are as many countries. But with permission of Honorable Minister and all of you, I'll extend it just by literally 5 minutes so that we conclude it properly, if that's okay. Thank you. What I'm going to do first is request I think there is a point that the CG Norway has. If there is no diplomatic quorum, that's the only one. And thereafter, I'm going to go to the Principal Secretary. And then I'll have a couple of comments to make, if that's all right. Yeah? All right, please, CG Norway. And I'm counting the minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. What I really wanted to talk about was something completely different. And I would take 30 seconds to just describe it and to leave it behind with the audience. But it's really more complicated than the EVs. It's sort of the hydrogen value chain and creating a hydrogen economy. And here, of course, you have a whole host of important issues related to production, storage, transportation, fuel cell technologies, and so on. What I wanted to say was that Norway is partnering with India, and Norwegian companies are partnering with companies here in Maharashtra. And I do think that Maharashtra has a wonderful opportunity, not the least because it has a very visionary and forward-leaning leadership in the Honorable Minister, to take a key position in this in India. And if it can, there was one point that was mentioned by previous speakers, that is of cluster organization. I believe it's a very, very important and good point. We do that in Norway for maritime issues, hydrogen, and so on. It is driving technology development. It is driving development on all these stages on the whole hydrogen value chain. So I think it's an excellent example. And if Maharashtra can start to engage manufacturers on all of these stages in the value chain, it will put itself in a very, very lucrative position. And it also has the access to the sea. Think about exports. If you can export up to 40% of your hydrogen in some years from now, you're turning around the whole energy equation here in Maharashtra and certainly also in India. So that is what I really wanted to leave behind, is that we have technology, we have competence, we are really keen to partner up with you here in Pune and in Maharashtra to drive this development forward. Thank you very much.
Many thanks. May I now request the Principal Secretary and the Chief Protocol Officer of Maharashtra Government, if she has any comments, and then we'll conclude.
I will just take this opportunity on behalf of the Government of Maharashtra and more specifically Minister for Environment and Protocol, Adityaji Thackeray, to thank all my friends for making out the time, coming out here to Pune and sharing your experiences. It has been great listening to your experiences as Maharashtra aims to go forward in the transport sector of making transport electric, making transport public more and more, shared and non-motorized. And I would also, on behalf of the Minister, like to welcome you to our next 5 conclaves in this whole aim of making Maharashtra carbon neutral at a very ambitious date. The Minister has just announced in the morning that the department, in collaboration with partners such as you, will be hosting 5 more conferences of decarbonizing energy, of making agriculture sustainable, of ensuring that we make our cities livable, of the built environment which has the lowest carbon footprint, and of course of ensuring that the industrial units and the MIDCs are free of noxious air and water pollutants. So I shall look forward, the department shall look forward to your august presence in all of these conferences, and thank you so much once again.
Many thanks. I think that leaves me a minute and 13 seconds, and I'll try my best. It's wonderful to hear you all. As I mentioned, it reminded me of my first job, even another one at Commonwealth, something similar. I'll not try to summarize because that will be difficult. I know that we would need a full day session to just hear each one of you in detail so that we can take out these experiences and see how in our context they are even more meaningful. They are, but they're even more meaningful and we take to implementation. While we wait for that one day session, here is one solution. I'm going to request a colleague of mine to reach out to each one of you so that he takes your opinion pieces or an interview, and we would come up with a small little booklet so that you are able to express all that you would want to express in terms of the excellence in each of your countries in the field of alternative fuel, as well as what is it that we can do in terms of cooperation with India, with Maharashtra, with Pune. So that's something that we would certainly do very soon. I think there is a whole lot that we can do collectively is the message of this session. There is a whole lot that can be achieved even in the most dynamic sessions is also the message of this session, because we started with 4 of us, there are 10 of us, and there was commonwealth of resource, like the space, like the water. There was just 45, 50 minutes. And I guess all of you did a wonderful job, coming from different countries, but the collective resolve to make sure that this all finishes in 50 minutes, as much as you have a resolve to make sure that we all move towards alternate fuels. So thank you so much for doing that without diplomatic conundrum. A huge round of applause to all of them. I'll take another minute of your time and I'll hand it over to my colleague Gitanjali.
Thank you so much, diplomats, for that wonderful session. May I now invite Dr. Anbalgan, CEO MIDC, and Dr. A.S. Ranganayak, Joint CEO MIDC, to please felicitate them.